Have you ever felt so broken that it seemed nothing could heal your pain? Perhaps you are going through a difficult time right now, where everything seems to be falling apart around you. But what if I told you there's something deeply powerful in those moments when we feel weakest? God, in His infinite wisdom, draws near exactly when we need Him most. He does not ignore our suffering. On the contrary, He is there, closer than you imagine, ready to restore what is broken. And you, who may have lost hope, did you know that His love is greater than any pain? Believe me, your pain has a greater purpose, and the refuge you seek is within your reach. Stay with me to understand how God transforms broken hearts into a testimony of faith and strength. True peace, the kind that fills the heart and soul, is not in possessions or achievements, but in harmony with God's divine plan. Psalm 34 reveals a powerful truth. Those who seek the Lord lack no good thing. This is more than just a simple promise. It is an invitation to a life of fullness and joy, where faith becomes the key to understanding and accepting God's mysteries. We were made to live aligned with divine purposes, something that elevates us above earthly limitations and connects us with the greater purpose of life. When someone begins to understand that the divine plan is the essence of life, they start to see challenges from a new perspective. What once seemed like an obstacle becomes an opportunity for growth and spiritual strengthening. Imagine the gratitude that comes from realizing that every step taken, whether in joy or suffering, is actually guided by a perfect plan. This is real transformation, the kind that comes from the inspiration God places in our hearts. And this is the moment when the motivation to move forward becomes more than just a simple desire. It becomes a purpose. As this connection to the divine plan strengthens, peace is established, even amid chaos. True faith opens doors that once seemed closed. It's in this space of spiritual tranquility that reflection becomes essential. Every decision, every choice made, is an opportunity to align further with God's will. But most importantly, it's about understanding that our journey is not isolated. We are all part of this great plan, and as part of something greater, we can find joy in surrendering. Now, have you ever wondered what you would do if you truly believed that nothing in your life is by chance? Life is not always a bed of roses, and everyone faces moments of weariness and distress. But in these moments, there is a fundamental truth we must not forget. God is always near to those with a broken heart. The invitation of Matthew chapter 11, verse 28, "Come to me, all you who are weary and burdened, and I will give you rest," is like an outstretched hand, waiting for those who feel oppressed. When we are at rock bottom, with no strength to go on, that's when faith becomes even more powerful. Because believe me, it's in the refuge of adversity that we find the strength to keep moving forward. And Psalm 34, verse 18, reinforces this message clearly. The Lord is close to the brokenhearted and saves those who are crushed in spirit. No matter how difficult the situation, God will always be there, ready to offer relief. Here, gratitude comes in a unique way. Sometimes, the best way to find relief is simply to stop and thank God for the small blessings. It can be as simple as taking a deep breath and recognizing the divine love that surrounds us, even when the storm seems endless. Now, imagine what would happen if you began to see adversity as moments of closeness with God. Every difficulty, no matter how challenging, would become an opportunity for refuge, a moment of spiritual rest. When you surrender to God in these moments, your faith is renewed, and the motivation to continue grows in a way you may have never experienced before. The secret lies in trusting in divine care, knowing that He never fails to sustain us. And in the end, maybe it's adversity that has prepared you for the next steps, those that will come with more clarity and direction. Often, we become anxious, waiting for things to happen according to our own timetable. But, as Lamentations chapter 3, verses 25 and 26 reminds us, the Lord is good to those who wait for him. Patience in the divine process is a virtue reflected in our trust that God's timing is perfect. No matter how much we desire a quick solution, God knows exactly the right moment to act. And though waiting can be challenging, reflecting on his wisdom gives us peace. When we understand that God's timing is always best, our faith is strengthened, knowing that he is not late. He is acting at the right time. This waiting, although frustrating, is full of purpose. Psalm 34 once again teaches us that the righteous cry out and the Lord hears them. But God's response doesn't always come the way we expect or at the time we want. This demands a deeper motivation, one that comes from the trust that, while we wait, he is working on our behalf. Joseph, in the Bible, is a clear example of how divine timing works. His patience and trust in God's promises, even in the most difficult situations, show that God's blessings are always greater than we can imagine. He waited, and the reward was grand. It's important to remember that during this waiting period, significant spiritual growth happens. Proverbs 3 verses 5 and 6 challenges us to fully trust in the Lord and not lean on our own understanding. Each day of waiting is an opportunity to grow spiritually, to learn to surrender everything into God's hands. This surrender, as difficult as it may be, prepares us for the blessings to come. As our faith grows and trust strengthens, the divine plan becomes even clearer. And before we realize it, we are ready for the next chapter of our journey. Waiting is not always easy, but it is precisely in the process of waiting that we find the key to spiritual growth. Psalm 34 tells us that those who wait for the Lord will not be put to shame. This waiting is like a plant that grows slowly, but whose roots deepen each day. The challenge is not losing faith, but rather nurturing patience, knowing that the greatness of what is to come is worth every moment of waiting. It's during this time that reflection becomes a powerful tool to find peace, because patience in the divine plan transforms chaos into order. Proverbs 3 verses 5 and 6 teaches us to trust God completely, even when circumstances tell us otherwise. The motivation to keep going without despair comes from the trust that God knows exactly what is best for us. Each passing day, as you wait, spiritual maturation occurs. It's as if each test is an opportunity to be molded into the image of God. Even in moments of doubt, remember that growth comes from perseverance and the trust that waiting is not in vain. The key to making the most of this waiting period is to fully surrender to God. This means letting go of control and trusting that He is working in your life, even when you can't see what lies ahead. It may be difficult, especially in times of uncertainty, but gratitude, even for the hard moments, helps keep your heart aligned with God's will. And as time passes, you will realize that instead of being a limitation, waiting was a preparation for what is to come. God is doing something great within you. The story of faith is filled with powerful examples that remind us of God's faithfulness. Abraham and Sarah, for example, received God's promise that they would be the parents of a great nation, even when, at first glance, this seemed impossible. What they showed was unwavering trust in what God promised. And as Psalm 34 teaches us, those who wait on the Lord will not be disappointed. Abraham, even in his old age, saw God's promise fulfilled. True faith is not based on circumstances, but on the trust that what God promises, He fulfills. Another notable example is that of Lazarus. When he died and was buried, his friends and family were devastated. But Jesus, upon arriving, showed that death has no power over God's promise. He resurrected Lazarus, proving that trust in God, even in the most discouraging situations, brings glorious results. This teaches us that when we trust in the divine plan, even the most difficult moments can be transformed into miracles. When the Lord is involved, the impossible becomes possible, and our faith becomes stronger. Joseph also gives us an impressive example of perseverance and faith. Even though he was sold by his own brothers and faced countless difficulties, he never lost his trust in God. In the end, Joseph became second in command in Egypt, and his story is a testimony that when we fully trust God, He transforms even the hardest situations into something wonderful. Joseph's story, as Psalm 34 reminds us, is proof that God is faithful to those who trust Him. And often, the greatest fruits come after the greatest struggles. Now that you understand how God is near to those with a broken heart, I ask, how have you been responding to the pain in your life? Have you been seeking refuge in His presence? If not, what is stopping you from surrendering completely to Him? I invite you to reflect on these questions and open your heart to the love God has for you. Remember, His care is immeasurable, and He desires to transform your pain into a story of victory. Are you ready to take the next step and let Him heal and strengthen you? If you feel that this journey of faith can lead you to a place of peace, I recommend reading the ebook Christmas, A Meeting with Divine Peace and Hope, which you can find in the pinned post. And, of course, don't forget to subscribe to the channel and turn on notifications to continue learning how to live a life transformed by faith.